Anytime you beg another man to set you free, you'll never be free. Freedom is something that you have to do for yourself.
Okay, day 19 just wrapped up. We had a break yesterday. Today we saw Dr. Wright and Mr. Madden come back to the stand, and we saw the conclusion of evidence. So there's going to be no trial next week. Next Friday they have to submit their closing arguments, their written closing arguments, and then oral closings will resume the Tuesday after that. So we've got a little bit more than a week to go. And yeah, I have to say, all in all, the only matter they discussed today was the new emails between Craig and Antier that were brought to the court's attention earlier this week, and the new Madden report. There's a new report by Madden, report number 6, about these emails. So that's really the only thing that they debated today. And really, Craig was up until lunch, and I thought it was a home run for Craig. I thought he did a great job of explaining his side of things. I mean, on this issue, it seems both sides have technical data that supports their argument that their version of the emails are authentic, because essentially each side is alleging that the other side has an email chain that is spoofed or inauthentic. They're claiming that Craig forged his by backdating the clock and essentially backdating the timestamps by setting his clock back and doing various things like that. There was one point where they were discussing the emails and just how the emails looked at face value, and Jonathan Hoff was really pressing Craig to answer when Craig was suggesting that at face value the documents have little value, because really you have to assess beyond just the face value of the documents, and that really the value is in what you see beyond face value and not just by looking at them. And Hoff wasn't accepting Craig's answer and kind of pressed Judge Meller to kind of coerce Craig to answer. And Meller flat out refused, and he really looked unimpressed when Jonathan Hoff made this request. Like very unimpressed. And actually, it seems like Jonathan Hoff recognized that and recoiled. His posture, his head sank, and he tucked his chin in. Just kind of looking like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, perhaps. Like he was worried that he'd stepped on the judge's toes a little bit by trying to coerce him to get Craig to answer. But it just seemed like, all in all, Craig had a better defense. The details that Craig highlighted that in defense of his emails being authentic seemed to be more specific, and he was bringing up like Google timestamps that seemed to support his version of the events and his chain of the emails. And at the end of his questioning, the judge really wanted to ask Craig who he thought might be behind pretty much all of the things that Craig has alleged that's been going on, where people have been spoofing his emails. Craig had alleged that people had been bugging his home, that he'd had private security come through his home previously, and every time his house has been searched by his private security detail, that they've found listening devices within his home, that he's had cameras replaced and like by other people swapped out so that they could monitor him, and a lot of serious allegations. And he was asked to essentially point the finger at who he thought that might be. And he did allude to Kristen Egger Hansen, although he said that he couldn't explicitly make that allegation because he would require more information, although it was a suspicion of his. But there was many people, there was hundreds of people who potentially could have had access to his account, his email account, just through it being public and made available to certain people over the course of the last few years. And it seemed like the judge, when asking Craig, was asking him because he wanted to hear more from Craig. Whereas when Mr. Madden concluded at the end of the day, the judge didn't have any questions for him. And to be perfectly honest, my interpretation in that, just reading into that personally, is I think that he didn't take Madden seriously at all. And I think that's because Madden absolutely nuked his own credibility when he took the stand before. There was a point in the day when he was talking about his report and he was being questioned by Craig's lawyers, and I thought Craig's lawyers were going to ask him if COPA's lawyers had helped him with this report as well, because they probably should have, actually, just to underscore that point again, that he's not at all independent and that he's shown clear bias. Although he didn't smile over at the COPA lawyers today, he did a good job of maintaining his calm and his cool. I don't think he looked like a deer in the headlights today as he did the last time. I think he probably got a little extra coaching, and it just being the second time around, he was a little more comfortable on the stand. But really, all in all, I thought he was giving more generalized answers as to why he thought the emails were forgeries of Craig's. There were certain things where he said that he didn't do certain testing. I think he said that he didn't have time. But there were certain things he didn't have an answer for, whereas Craig seemed to have an answer for everything and had more specific details. And I don't know, it just seemed more convincing. All in all, I think that Craig gave a more convincing account for why the email chain looks the way it does. And I think the judge wanted to hear more from him about it and allowed Craig to speculate on who might be doing that, because it's something that the judge is actually curious about, like who really is behind all this. I don't think he would really ask that question just to get Craig's opinion, to make Craig feel good. I think it's something the judge actually wants to know, like who's actually behind all this. If all this is being done, I think the judge is convinced by Craig's story. To be perfectly honest, I think there's like a 75% chance, now that all the evidence is in, I think it's a 75% chance in my mind that Craig will win this. There's some chance, I think, that if Justice Mellow goes back and reviews everything, there might be something that he's maybe overlooked that could maybe get him to think the other way. But I think right now Justice Mellow is leaning towards Craig is Satoshi. I think the evidence he's shown with his work on Blacknet prior to the issuance of the Bitcoin white paper is extremely convincing. That he's scaled Bitcoin to 1.5, 1.1, whatever it is, million transactions per second that Terranode is doing now is extremely convincing. That he has all of this intellectual patent, all of these intellectual property rights, all these patents, all this IP for blockchain and Bitcoin related technology. It builds a very convincing case for Craig. The private signing sessions, the witness testimony, I don't think that COPA did a very good job of discounting that witness testimony. I think there was a little bit of uncertainty that they could perhaps have. I mean, there's some degree of doubt that they could cast on it, but it wasn't a high degree of doubt. I don't believe that they did a good job of creating a high degree of doubt that the signing sessions were necessarily faked. And I think the witness testimony given by Craig's witnesses was more convincing than that of COPA's. And all in all, I just think Craig's team made a more convincing case that he's Satoshi than that all of these documents are forgeries. And there's a bunch that they're not even debating. So I think when you combine the fact that these experts that said these are all forgeries discredited themselves terribly on the stand, and that Craig came across very convincing, I think it's going to be a win for Craig. And really, I think you looking at the price of BTC right now, and we've seen what's happened with Coinbase when it was surging, when the price of BTC was surging, how Coinbase shuts down. I think it's really a sign of what's to come if Craig wins this case. Because, I mean, what might just be happening is that they're pumping up the market right now, knowing that it's at the last leg, and they want to get they want to drain that last dollar out of the market. They want to squeeze everyone out of that last bit of money, get the last bit out of that Ponzi while they can. And this is something that Craig said at the end of the day. They want to keep this Ponzi going as long as they can. And if Craig is going to be victorious, the fact that BTC is approaching its all-time high right now is not a coincidence. It's because the end is near and they want to milk it for all it's worth. What's happened with Coinbase in the last few days just shows you institutional money is going to be able to exit first. It's ordinary people that are going to be left holding the bag if everyone finds out overnight that BTC isn't really Bitcoin and that Craig Wright is Satoshi. All these big players that have entered the market in the last few years, they're going to get out first because all the exchanges are going to allow them to front run retail. And that means everyday ordinary people who believed in Bitcoin and believed in BTC thinking it was Bitcoin are going to be left holding the bag and holding losses. And institutional money is going to take that near all-time high profits, or maybe we may even potentially pass the all-time high by the time this trial is over. And all these people are FOMOing into it without any awareness of the risk that this trial represents. It's insane. And it's absolutely nuts that nobody is talking about the risks that this trial represents at the time when we're approaching all-time highs again. It's like completely outside of the mainstream narrative and discussion right now. It's absolutely nuts. And really, it's just going to blindside everybody if Craig wins. It's going to absolutely come out of left field. There's going to be people who are going to be like, what trial, when this is announced? I think that might be the overwhelming reaction for a lot of people is what Satoshi trial? What happened? They don't even know this is happening. So yeah, I'm gonna make a more in-depth video over the next week, going over all of the evidence that's presented and putting my 2 cents on whether or not I think each piece of evidence is credible. I think I've made it quite clear that there's certain things that are in a shade of gray. There's certain things that are beyond being questioned, and then there's certain things that, there's a question mark over them still. But I'll lay all that out in a more in-depth video. I got a week off now, essentially, and you don't have to do these daily reports, so I'll put out a few more videos about the new emails that have been released between Satoshi and Marty Malmy, and I'll just try to put that all together into a much longer format video with some good editing in it. So stay tuned for that. But otherwise, yeah, I think Craig demonstrated that he's very likely the person behind Bitcoin. I think the judge is convinced by him. I think he just wants to review everything. Obviously, he has to remain impartial until he's reviewed everything again. But I think just reading into how it ended, how he wanted to know more about who's doing all of this to Craig, whereas he didn't want to even question Madden anymore. I think he just doesn't even... I think he, in the eyes of Justice Mellow, Madden has no credibility. And I think... I said from a few weeks ago that so much was going to be riding on the cross-examination of the experts, and COPA's experts just nuked their own credibility on the stand. With the exception of maybe Sarah Mickeljorn, because she was just there to speculate about how the signing sessions could be subverted. So I'm optimistic for a Craig victory, and I'm worried for ordinary BTC people who just don't know this is even happening and are going to get left holding the bag. So like, share, spread this video to try to help those people. I know a lot of the BTC community wants to see these people learn the hard way, but a lot of these people just don't know. So, maybe you can convert them in, I don't know, we got 10 days or something like that to try to convert them. We've got a few days of oral closings, and yeah, then we'll get a verdict soon after. So look forward to my next videos, I guess.